What if I told you that the exhaustion you feel, the quiet collapse at the end of each day, is not coming from the work itself, but from something far more invisible, something woven so tightly into the fabric of your identity that you cannot see it even when you look directly at it? What if the weight pressing down on your chest in the morning, before you even open your eyes, is not the world asking too much of you, but you asking too much of yourself in a language you learned so long ago that you believe it is your own voice? There's a moment, barely perceptible, when the body begins to whisper. It does not shout. It does not demand. It simply withdraws a little, like a tide pulling back from the shore. And in that withdrawal, something inside you notices. You may not have words for it yet. You may only feel a faint heaviness, a sense that the performance you have been giving day after day is no longer feeding you. It is draining you. And the drain is so slow, so steady, that you mistake it for normal life. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that nothing in your life is accidental. Not the people who have drifted away. Not the opportunities that dissolved before you could grasp them. Not the sudden disinterest in things that once excited you. What if all of it, every single thread, is part of a larger pattern that your conscious mind cannot see because it is too busy trying to control the outcome? There is an intelligence beneath your thoughts, beneath your plans, beneath the version of yourself you present to the world. Carl Jung called it the unconscious, but that word can feel cold, clinical. Think of it instead as the part of you that knows things before you know them. The part that sends you dreams you do not understand. The part that makes you inexplicably tired on a day when nothing particularly hard has happened. This part of you does not speak in arguments or explanations. It speaks in sensations, in withdrawals, in the sudden absence of motivation where motivation used to live. And when that part of you begins to pull your energy back, when it stops feeding the machinery of proving, of performing, of defending your worth to an invisible audience, something profound begins to happen. Your energy, which has been scattered across 1,000 external mirrors, begins to return. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, like water seeping back into a well that has been dry for years. You may not notice it at first. You may only notice that you care a little less about what someone thought of what you said. You may notice that you do not feel the need to explain yourself the way you used to. You may notice that silence, which once felt like failure, now feels like rest. These are not small things. These are the early signs that something inside you is reorganizing itself, something that has been out of place for so long that you built your entire life around the imbalance. Jung spent much of his life studying the ways the unconscious communicates with us, not through clear directives, but through symbols, through patterns that repeat until we finally stop and pay attention. He believed that the psyche has its own intelligence, its own timing, and that when we try to force ourselves into shapes that do not fit, the unconscious begins to resist, not out of malice, but out of protection. It knows, long before the mind admits it, that you cannot sustain a life built on the need to prove. It knows that the persona, the mask you wear to meet the world, is not the same as the self, the deeper ground of who you are. And when the gap between those two grows too wide, when the persona demands too much and the self receives too little, the body begins to speak. The energy begins to pull inward. The enthusiasm fades. The old strategies stop working, and you are left standing in a kind of quiet crisis, not knowing whether you are failing or finally waking up. In this video, I want to share with you 7 signs that your energy is returning home, 7 subtle shifts that indicate you're no longer feeding the need to prove yourself, and that something deeper, something truer, is beginning to reclaim the space that performance once occupied. These are not things you can force. They are not goals you can achieve. They are recognitions, moments of seeing what has already begun to happen inside you. And if you stay with me until the end, you may find that experiences you thought were signs of weakness or confusion were actually the first movements of a profound inner reorientation. You may find that the exhaustion was not a problem to solve, but a message to receive. You may find that the moment you stopped trying so hard to be seen, you finally began to see yourself. The first sign is so quiet that most people miss it entirely. It is the fading of the inner argument. For years, maybe for your entire life, there's been a voice inside you that prepares responses, that rehearses conversations, that defends you against criticisms that have not even been spoken yet. You know this voice. It is the one that replays a moment from earlier in the day and rewrites it, sharpening your words, making you wittier, stronger, more right. It is the voice that imagines what someone might think of you and then builds an elaborate case for why they are wrong. This voice is exhausting, but you have lived with it for so long that you do not realize how much energy it consumes. It runs in the background like a program you never chose to install, draining your battery even when you are doing nothing at all. And then one day, without announcement, it begins to fade. You notice, perhaps while washing dishes or walking to your car, that the argument you would normally be having in your head is simply not there. Someone said something to you earlier, something that would have triggered hours of internal up is the fantasy that being fully understood by another person is possible, or even necessary. Jung wrote about the irreducible mystery of the individual psyche, the way each person is a world unto themselves, shaped by experiences and symbols and unconscious forces that no one else can fully access. To expect another person to see you completely is to expect them to live inside your skin, to carry your history, to feel your feelings. It is an impossible demand, and it places a burden on relationships that they were never meant to carry. When you release that demand, when you stop trying to be understood and start simply being, your energy stops leaking out into the endless work of self-explanation. It returns to you. It becomes available for other things, for presence, for curiosity, for the quiet pleasure of existing without needing to justify that existence. You may find that your relationships change when this shift happens. Some people, who were drawn to the old dynamic, who needed you to need their approval, may drift away, and that is okay. That is part of the process. Others, who can meet you in this new space, who do not need you to perform or explain, will come closer. And the intimacy you find there will be different. It will not be based on being understood. It will be based on being seen, which is a subtler, quieter thing. Being seen does not require explanation. It requires presence. It requires the willingness to be exactly as you are, without translation, without defense. And when you stop proving yourself, when you stop trying to manage how others perceive you, you create the conditions for that kind of seeing to occur. The third sign is one that often gets misinterpreted when you are busy. You create space for your energy to settle, to find its natural rhythm, to stop being driven by the need to prove and start being guided by something deeper. This boredom is not emptiness. It is fullness without form. It is the presence of potential without the demand for outcome. And it is one of the clearest signs that you are no longer spending your energy on performance. You are allowing it to rest, to gather, to return to the source. People who are still caught in the need to prove will not understand this shift. They will see your stillness as laziness. They will see your lack of urgency as apathy. They may try to pull you back into the old busyness, to remind you of all the things you should be doing, all the ways you should be improving. And you may feel a twinge of doubt, a fear that they are right, that you are falling behind. But the truth is, you are not falling behind. You are catching up to yourself. You are finally allowing your body and your psyche to move at their own pace, rather than the pace demanded by a world that profits from your constant striving. And in that allowance, in that willingness to be bored, to be still, to do nothing, you are reclaiming your energy from a system that never had your best interest at heart. The fifth sign is one that many people experience, but few recognize for what it is. It is the quiet dissolution of ambition. Not all ambition, not the desire to create or contribute or engage with life, but the specific kind of ambition that is rooted in proving, in becoming someone impressive, in achieving a status that will finally make you feel secure. For years, maybe decades, you have carried a vision of who you are supposed to become. This vision has driven you, motivated you, given you direction. It has been the North Star by which you navigate your choices. And you have believed that reaching this vision, becoming that person, will bring you peace, fulfillment, the sense that you have finally arrived. But the closer you get, or the longer you strive without arriving, the more you begin to notice a strange emptiness. The vision that once felt so compelling now feels distant. Not impossible, just irrelevant. As if it belongs to someone else, someone you used to be, but no longer are. This can be terrifying. If you're not striving toward that vision, then what are you doing? If you do not care about becoming impressive, about achieving the markers of success, then what is the point? You may feel a sense of failure, a fear that you're giving up, that you are settling, that you are betraying the person you were supposed to become. But what is actually happening is that the persona, the constructed self that was built around external validation, is losing its power. The self, the deeper ground, is no longer interested in that game. It does not need to be impressive. It does not need to achieve a particular status. It simply wants to live, to be, to engage with life in a way that feels true rather than strategic. And as your energy returns home, as it stops feeding the machinery of ambition, you begin to feel this shift. You begin to notice that the things you thought you wanted were never really yours. They were borrowed. They were inherited. They were the dreams of a culture that measures worth by achievement, and you're no longer interested in being measured. Jung wrote about the second half of life as a time when the focus shifts from expansion to integration, from becoming to being. He observed that many people spend the first half of their lives building an identity, establishing themselves in the world, proving their worth. But at a certain point, often triggered by crisis or exhaustion or simply the passage of time, the psyche begins to ask different questions. Not what can I achieve, but what is true? Not who can I become, but who am I beneath all the becoming? This shift is not a loss. It is a deepening. It is the movement from the surface to the depths, from the persona to the self. And it requires the release of ambitions that were never truly aligned with your soul's intention. It requires the willingness to disappoint the version of yourself that was built on external validation. It requires the courage to stop proving and start being. You may find that your goals change during this time, not because you are lowering your standards, but because your standards are becoming more honest. You may find that you are less interested in recognition and more interested in meaning, less interested in success and more interested in authenticity, less interested in becoming someone and more interested in being yourself. These shifts are not failures. They are signs that your energy is returning to its rightful place, that you're no longer spending it on a life that was never truly yours. And the more you honor this shift, the more you allow the old ambitions to dissolve without replacing them with new ones, the more space you create for something real to emerge. Not a plan, not a vision, but a way of being that is aligned with who you actually are, rather than who you thought you should be. The sixth sign is one that often goes unnoticed because it happens so valued, overlooked, taken for granted. This resentment has lived in your body, tightening your shoulders, clenching your jaw, making you tired in a way proof is never enough. No matter how much you give, how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, it is never quite enough to earn the validation you seek. And so the resentment grows, not because others are failing you, but because you are failing yourself by continuing to play a game that cannot be won. And then, as your energy begins to return home, as you stop trying to prove yourself, the resentment begins to fade. Not because you have forgiven anyone, not because the situations have changed, but because you are no longer invested in the outcome. You are no longer waiting for recognition. You are no longer measuring your worth by how others respond to you. And without that measurement, without that need for external validation, the resentment has nothing to feed on. It simply dissolves, like mist in the morning sun. You may not even notice it happening. You may only notice one day that you think about a person or a situation that used to make you angry, and you feel nothing. Not numbness, not suppression, just a quiet neutrality, a sense that it no longer matters in the way it used to. This is not indifference. This is freedom. This is what it feels like when your energy is no longer tied up in proving, in defending, in needing others to see your worth. Jung understood that resentment is often a sign of unlived life, of energy that has been directed outward when it should have been directed inward. When we give ourselves away in the hope of being valued, when we perform in the hope of being seen, we create a debt that can never of the numinous, the sense of encountering something larger than yourself, something that evokes awe and humility. He believed that the psyche is naturally oriented toward the numinous, that we are drawn to experiences that remind us of the mystery and depth of existence. But when we are caught in the need to prove, when our energy is spent on maintaining a persona and defending our worth, we lose access to the numinous. We lose the capacity to be moved. We become too defended, too controlled, too focused on outcomes to allow the world to touch us. When your energy returns home, when you stop proving, you become porous during this time. Not from sadness, though sadness may come, but from being touched. A piece of music, a conversation, the way these gifts of stopping the need to prove. You are no longer armored. You are no longer performing. You are simply here, open, vulnerable, alive. These 7 signs, And all you need to do is allow it. All you need to do is stop trying to prove, stop trying to force, stop trying to be anyone other than who you are. And in that stopping, in that simple, profound act of release, you will discover a life that was always here, waiting for you to come home. If this resonated with you, if you recognize yourself in any of these signs, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Share your experience. Share what you're noticing. Share the moments when you felt your energy returning home. And if this video offered you something, if it helped you see your own process more clearly, please consider liking and subscribing. Not because I need you to, but because it helps this work reach others who may be in the same quiet crisis, the same profound shift, the same journey home. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing yourself to stop, even for these few moments, and simply be.